everyone, welcome back to our channel. I am Anne and I'm one half of the Sussex Handmade Soap Company along with my good friend and business partner Wayne. And today we are going to be talking about fragrance oils, essential oils, IFRA documents which are in relation to fragrance oils, how much fragrance or essential oil you can safely and legally use in your bath and body products if you are based in the UK, and how to find out all of that information that you are going to need to know when you actually come to making your products with a view to selling them. You'll have to excuse me today, I shall be glancing down to my left from time to time because I have written 3 pages full of notes on things I want to say in today's video. Normally I kind of just wing our videos and just say whatever comes into my head, but with something that is pretty important to get spot on, like fragrance oils and essential oils and usage in soap, I want to make sure that I am telling you everything that I have wanted to tell you, so everything I think that you need to know when you are starting out using essential oils and fragrance oils. And I want to make sure that I don't miss anything out or get anything muddled up. So I have written, a load of notes that I have got just down here next to me to remind my brain not to forget to say anything. So that is why from time to time I will be glancing down to my left in today's video. So when it comes to actually using fragrance oils or essential oils in soap, there are 2 sets of regulations that you really have to be aware of when you are working out how much you are going to put into your soap. And the first is the actual assessor regulations. In the UK and in the EU, you have to get soap and body products assessed for sale before you are allowed to sell them. And the assessors in the UK will generally permit essential oils or fragrance oils to be used at up to 3% in rinse-off products or up to 1% in leave-on products. And what that means is that if you've got a fragrance oil or an essential oil that you want to use, your assessor is only going to allow you to use 3% maximum in something like a soap or 1% maximum in something like a body butter. It doesn't matter if the IFRA document for the fragrance tells you that fragrance is safe for use at 50%, you are not going to be allowed to use it at above 1% for leave-on or 3% for rinse-off products within the UK. So there is no point trying to formulate something with a higher percentage, because as soon as it becomes that you're ready to get it sent in and assessed, your assessor is going to pick up that you are using the fragrance oil at a amount that is higher than what they allow, and you're then going to be told that you've got to reformulate and change your recipe, which you don't want to do. So that is the first set of regulations you need to be aware of, and the second ones are the actual safe usage limits for the essential oil itself, which will vary depending on which essential oil you have chosen to use, or it will be the IFRA documented safe usage limit, which is in relation to fragrance oils. And the IFRA document will tell you the safe usage limit for the fragrance that you have chosen to use. So the actual amount of fragrance oil or essential oil that you can use in your soap or other bath or body product will either be the 3% maximum for rinse-off products that your assessor has set, or again 1% if it is a leave-on product, or it will be the safe usage amount that is given in the IFRA document or that is relevant to the specific essential oil that you are using, and it will be whichever amount is lower. So like I say, if you want to use a fragrance oil and the IFRA says you can use it at 50%, you can't. You can only use it in the UK at 3% for a rinse-off product or at 1% for a leave-on product, because your assessor will not permit it to be used at any amount higher than that. If, however, the fragrance oil IFRA document said you could only use that fragrance oil at 2% safely, then that would take precedence over what the assessor says, so you would only be able to use that oil at 2%. So it is whichever percentage amount is lower is what you need to go with. You need to either be at 2% in that example I've just given or lower. You cannot go higher. And this brings me on to the slight differences between essential oils and fragrance oils. Essential oils have the same chemical makeup because they are a natural oil. So if I was to go to supplier A and buy a lavender essential oil, and then I wanted to change and I wanted to go and buy my lavender essential oil from supplier B, as long as my lavender essential oil has got the same inky name, I can be sure that it's going to have the exact same chemical makeup and components. So that oil is not going to vary from supplier to supplier because it is natural oil and it's going to have the same chemical makeup. So my assessor therefore knows that if I'm using a lavender essential oil and it's got the same inky name, supplier A and supplier B, that essential oil is going to be made up of the same chemicals. Whereas fragrance oils are completely different. I could go to supplier A and I could buy a roses fragrance oil, and then I could decide that I want to go and buy a roses fragrance oil from supplier B. And even though those two fragrance oils may have the same name, they could be made up of entirely different chemical components and ingredients. Fragrance oils do vary, and what one supplier calls a rose-scented fragrance oil may be completely different and made up of completely different chemicals and different allergens to what supplier B names as their roses essential oil. And that is why you need the IFRA documents for fragrance oils, because it will tell your assessor and you exactly what has gone into that particular fragrance oil from that particular supplier. And that is why when you are getting a recipe assessed, when you use an essential oil, you are generally not tied to using the same supplier for your essential oils. So if you put supplier A down on your assessment form, you can then switch, to a different supplier if you want to. Obviously, you will need to check this with your assessor, and sometimes if they have actually named your supplier on your assessment, you are tied to sticking to that supplier. However, our assessor, we don't have to put down our suppliers for essential oil, so that little box for supplier stays blank, and that means that with essential oils we are free to shop around. So if the price changes or if a supplier is out of stock, we can switch our essential oil suppliers without any issues. However, fragrance oils, when you put our assessment in, you must state who you are purchasing from. So you must put the supplier name on your assessment form, and you will then be tied to purchasing your fragrance oil from that particular supplier, forever after. The only way you could then change your supplier would be to actually pay an amendment fee and to change your entire assessment, and that is generally around £30 to £40 to make an amendment to an assessment, which is why when you are using fragrance oils, it's a good idea to make sure that you are 100% happy with your supplier, and that they are a reputable supplier who you are going to be able to get that fragrance oil from, without too much hassle in the future. The last thing you want is to pay to get a recipe assessed and then find out that, a couple of months later, the fragrance oil supplier discontinues your fragrance, because then you can't make that soap anymore without paying for an assessment amendment and changing the fragrance oil. So there is more flexibility with using essential oils. But sometimes it is just nice to use a fragrance oil. So as long as you've got a reputable supplier and you are happy with everything about your fragrance oil, then, just pop down the supplier name in the assessment and make sure you always buy from them in the future. And there is one common, I'm going to say, myth that goes around, and I don't want to touch on it too heavily because it is quite an emotive subject and people do have strong opinions on this. But I just want to point out that there is a common misconception that essential oils are safe and fine to use because they are natural, that they're not going to do you any harm and that they're all good, and that fragrance oils, because they're synthetic, are toxic and, terrible substances to be avoided. That is completely untrue. Essential oils are not safe just because they are natural. Saying something is safe is absolutely not the same as saying it is natural. Essential oils can be incredibly harmful if they are used incorrectly. For example, something like a cinnamon leaf, you are only allowed to use a tiny percentage in your soaps or body products because it is a dangerous essential oil if you use it in the wrong levels. It can burn your skin, and many essential oils, if you use the wrong amounts or handle them incorrectly, can burn you, or they can really harm you. Some of them are photosensitizers. A lot of citrus oils are photosensitizers. That means when you have got them on your skin, even in small amounts, if you then go outside in the sun, you are more prone to actually burning. So because they are natural, they are not automatically safe, which is why it's really good to actually read up and have a little bit of knowledge about the essential oils and about the actual properties and potential hazards of the particular essential oil that you are using. And likewise, fragrance oils, yeah, they are synthetic oils. They are not 100% natural. However, here in the UK, we have such stringent testing and such tough regulations on things like fragrance oils that many of them are just as safe as essential oils, and in some cases potentially even safer. And an example of this would be something like a rose essential oil, which cannot be used by pregnant women. It is dangerous for pregnant women to use rose essential oil because it can stimulate the uterus and cause contractions, which you obviously absolutely do not want and need to avoid if you are pregnant. However, a pregnant lady may well be able to use a rose fragrance oil because it has got a different chemical makeup to the essential oil, and it has been played around with and synthetically created to be safe for use during pregnancy. So that is just one example of where a fragrance oil for a certain person can actually be safer than using the essential oil version. Anyway, that is enough on that, because that is quite an emotive subject, and I know that people do get quite, they get quite into, if you like fragrance oils or you like essential oils, a lot of people are very much, of the mindset that they like what they like, and it can be quite an emotive subject. That's what I'm trying to say. So we'll leave it there. But if you want to use essential oils, that's great. If you want to use fragrance oils, that's great. And it's just nice to just live and let live. Don't judge somebody who wants to do something a little differently to you. Just be happy with the way you're doing things and do it your way, and let other people do things their way. That's all I've got to say on that. So let's move on. So now we've talked about the allowable usage rates, I want to talk about how to actually find out what those allowable usage rates are. And with essential oils, I have to say it is pretty tough. Personally, I find it pretty tough to find out the allowable usage rates for essential oils. The regulations changed slightly back in January 2020, and since then it has been harder to find the published allowable usage rates for essential oils. So all I can say on that is it is probably best, if you are uncertain, to just check with your assessor, because they are going to be able to advise you much better than I can. And if you're formulating a new recipe, it is always best to check before you start formulating and playing around. Check with somebody who knows. So yeah, just fire off a quick email or a quick phone call to an assessor or an assessment company, and they should be able to actually give you the correct up-to-date usage amounts for essential oils. And for fragrance oils, there should be an IFRA document, and I've mentioned that a few times earlier on in the video. An IFRA document is basically a document that, among other things, will show you the safe allowable usage level for a fragrance oil in many different bath and body and home products. Obviously, we look at them generally for soap and sometimes for things like bath bombs and that. IFRA documents are generally fairly often available to actually download on the website that you have purchased your fragrance oil from. If when you come to purchase your fragrance oil there is no link to download an IFRA or anything like that, then I would definitely double check with the supplier and ask for the IFRA document, because you will not get a soap or a bath and body product assessed here in the UK for sale unless you are able to provide a copy of that IFRA document. So it is hugely important that you do get hold of that document. And when you've got that document, you also need to make sure that it does state the amendment number, and I will show you an example of that in a little bit. Be careful if you are purchasing fragrance oils from abroad, especially the USA, because they have slightly different rules regarding IFRAs, and they don't always show the amendment number. So you need the amendment number to be shown in the UK, so make sure that that is visible on the IFRA document. And we learnt that one the hard way ourselves a few months ago when we were first playing with fragrance oils. Yeah, we had to reformulate a couple of soaps that we had done purely because the IFRA that was supplied, it was a oil from the USA and they hadn't put the amendment number. So we had to reformulate, which wasn't fun. So on that note, I am now going to show you an example of an IFRA. Hopefully this is going to work. So this here is an IFRA document. It is for a Velvet Peony and Oud fragrance that we actually use in one of our soaps, and we use it in a bath bomb that we are creating as well. Oh, hello. Text message. Thought I'd turn that down. Anyway, yes, so it is in our bath bombs and our soaps. So on the IFRA document, remember where I said it needed to show the amendment number. And you can see here where I've highlighted that this document does show that it is the 48th amendment. So that's great. It shows the amendment number, and that is what it needs to do. And then we need to work out at what level this oil is safe for use in our soaps and bath bombs. And soaps and bath bombs both fall into category 9A in the IFRA. And if you're unsure, generally on IFRA documents, if you scroll down a couple more pages, this is page 1. On page 3, there is a breakdown of what the categories are and what falls into each category. So that is pretty helpful too. But I already know that soaps and bath bombs are both category 9A. So if I look down to category 9A, stop messaging me, you're interrupting my videoing. Scroll down to category 9A. And you can see that this particular oil is safe for use at 100%. Now, remember what I said, you cannot use this oil at 100%. I mean, you wouldn't get soap if you used the oil at 100%. That would be ridiculous. What it just means is that it's safe at levels up to 100%. And so in this instance, the assessor regulations would take precedence. So you would be able to use this oil at 3% in soaps, and you'll be able to use it at 1% in leave-on products such as body butters and things like that. I believe bath bombs, I believe the limit is 2%. I will need to double check that, but I am pretty sure the limit is 2%. In our bath bombs, we're only actually using around about 1%, so we are below the limit on our bath bombs. But I think the limit for bath bombs is 2%. Right, so that is an IFRA there. And as I say, they should be easily available to either download when you purchase your fragrance oils, or your supplier shouldn't have any issues at all with being able to forward them to you. If they are not available for download and the supplier is being a bit strange about forwarding them to you, then I would move on and I would choose a different supplier, because I don't want the hassle of having to chase people up for IFRA documents when I'm trying to make soaps and bath bombs and deal with everything else as well. Right, now let's have a look at another IFRA. This is for a lemongrass and ginger fragrance oil. And this is a fragrance oil that we are using in some bath bombs. And if we look down to category 9A, we can see that this one is actually only safe for use at up to 1.96%. So in this instance, the information on the IFRA will be the information that you need to follow, and the assessor regulations of 3% for rinse off or 1% for leave on will not apply because this is only safe at 1.96%. So if I was to put a soap with this into my assessor with this oil used at 3%, my assessor would look at it and he'd say, you can't do that, it's not safe at 3%, you can only use 1.96%. So my report would be returned and I'd have to amend it and reformulate. And that is why it's really important to check both the IFRA documents as well as the assessor regulations when you are formulating, because as you can see, different fragrance oils have hugely different safe usage limits. You know, Velvet Peony and Oud was 100%, whereas lemongrass and ginger is 1.96%. So they vary so much. So always check the IFRA document for the oil that you want to use before you start formulating products. And when you are formulating products, you also need to realise that when they say, or when the assessor will say, you can use fragrance or essential oils at up to 3%, that is as a whole. If I was to try and do a blend of, say, lavender essential oil and rosemary essential oil, and I went, oh, I'll use 3% of lavender and I'll use 3% of rosemary, that wouldn't be allowed because that would total 6%. The 3% limit that the assessors put down for rinse-off products is as a whole for all of your essential oils. So in that example, I would need to use my lavender at 1.5% and my rosemary at 1.5%, or 2% and 1%, just to make up 3% as a whole. You cannot use 3% lavender and 3% rosemary because the 3% limit is taken for your entire blend. So if I was using 3 essential oils, that would be 1% of each, up to a maximum, 3% for all of them combined. It is per blend, not per oil. And finally, the last thing I want to touch on is when you come down to labelling your products. And obviously with essential oils, it is relatively easy. You just need to list the INCI name essential oil and any relevant allergens. With fragrance oils, I've had people ask me, what do I need to put when I'm using a fragrance oil? Do I need to list every single ingredient in my fragrance oil on my personal ingredients label? And the answer is no, you don't. Fragrance oils have so many different components and you do not need, thankfully, to list all of those on your own ingredients labels. What you need to write is parfum. P-A-R-F-U-M. That is the term that is acceptable for fragrance oils on labelling here in the UK and I believe in the EU as well. So it is just parfum it goes down as. If there are any allergens present, and if they are present at above 0.01% in rinse-off products or above 0.001% in leave-on products, you will also need to list what those allergens are on your ingredients label, and that is hugely important because if you miss out allergens and somebody has a reaction, you're going to be in a lot of trouble, and you're also potentially going to have to, you know, live for the rest of your life with the moral fact that you've caused somebody harm because you haven't labelled your product correctly. So allergens are really important to check if your fragrance oil usage level has triggered any allergens, and if it does, they need to be listed on your label. And in next week's video, we are actually going to be covering allergens. We're going to be covering what the 26 allergens in cosmetics are, and we are going to be covering how to find out if they're present in your soap, and we're also going to be covering how to work out at what level they are present in your soap and whether they are going to trigger the need to write the allergen down on your ingredients label. So that'll be next week. Yeah, it's all about allergens next Tuesday, and hopefully that'll be a little bit helpful. We're also going to put up our own allergen calculator and tell you how you can download that from us if you want to. So that is about IFRA today. IFRAs and essential oils and usage limits, and hopefully I have covered most things that you need to know when using essential oils and fragrance oils. If I have missed anything out or there is anything else you want to question, do pop a question down in the comments box. I will try and answer comments as quickly as possible. I am a little bit behind at the moment. It is starting to get busy here. I am trying to answer comments as quickly as possible, but it may well take a few days. Thank you for watching today's video. If you have found it helpful, please do give us a like and please do subscribe to the channel because that really does help us. Thank you for watching, and yeah, I hope you found it interesting. I hope you found it useful, and if this is the kind of content that you are interested in and that does help you, then please do subscribe to the channel as well. And we shall see you on Friday for a soap making video, and we shall see you next Tuesday for all about allergens. Bye for now.